Hey guys, just a couple important points ahead of this very important episode. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, don't forget that your local high school guidance office actually has a great list of resources available for adults and youth. So be sure to reach out to them if you or someone you know is struggling. Secondly, in this episode, we failed to mention or forgot to mention hot and cold therapy. We've done a ton of research on saunas and ice baths, and they are not only effective in physical health, but also in mental health. So be sure to experiment with those ideas in a safe way. There's tons of resources online for parents and players in that regard. And finally, in this episode, you'll notice that I struggled to come up with the term dopamine. That's the chemical release that I was getting at that you'll hear in the episode. When we work out physically or exert ourselves, that's the one that can counteract some negative effects and can really help improve our mental health.
What's the big idea?
Okay, we are here for another episode. We are in the double digits, by the way. This is episode number 10.
Unbelievable.
Diez. Número 10 in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
French. Erik?
What?
French.
What about it?
Number 10 in French.
DIX?
10. Meach?
Which one do you want?
10 Meach. Okay, welcome to Volleyballology. My name is Zuby.
Am I next? I thought. Oh, I was confused from the whole little sing song
Just say
you
your
guys did
damn
last
name.
time.
Say your damn name.
My name's Erik.
My name's Meach.
Yeah, we didn't do that last episode, so Erik's confused.
And we apologize if you guys didn't know who we were the whole entire show.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. It's in the write-up too. It's in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
But today's topic is a serious one, and it's one that I think a lot of parents, players, and coaches need to sort of get a handle on. It is the issue of anxiety, mental health for young athletes, and coaches and everybody, parents too, but particularly as it pertains to the athletes themselves. So basically, we're going to talk about some prevention strategies, some coping things, some ideas for coping, and even how athletes can maybe thrive. Maybe I should preface this with a little bit about so personally. Aside from coaching and playing for a while, I was a teacher for a long time, taught psychology for a number of years, took psychology in university, and also was a guidance counselor for a number of years. So I have counseled students with anxiety and took a few courses with that too. So just so people know, that's as a preface before we start talking, rambling on here, we're not just making up a bunch of stuff. And also, as athletes, we've all had issues with.
Well, Meach and I will be making up a bunch of stuff.
No, well, Erik, again, full disclosure, you've had anxiety issues as well in your life, and you're going to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, see, that's the other thing too. One thing that I do like to tell people is that I think there's something that's changed in society where anxiety has turned into a bad word, and it never used to be. So I remember actually about 10 years ago, I was teaching a class, and I used the term anxious to explain. Anxious used to be a good word. If someone was anxious for a trip or anxious to go somewhere, it used to be a positive.
Yeah.
But all the kids in the class turned to me and said, anxious? And I was like, yeah, I'm excited. They go, that's not what anxious means. They all believed that anxious was a bad thing now. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's kind of changed that way.
It really happened. That day I was like, oh, interesting, because we used to use the term anxious as a good thing, and they had all turned anxious or anxiety or, anxiety always had a bad connotation, but even the root word
that,
anxious.
Yeah, excited nervousness. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be.
Yeah.
Now if you say it to a young person, they think of it as a bad thing or something to be afraid of.
Yeah, I think the connotation comes from how the word is said. Like, for example, if say, I'm really anxious, whether and another way to say it is, are you getting anxious about this particular event or idea or something like that. But it's really taking a different tone just because of, you know, how you say it. You can say it in a positive way and keep it positive.
Not anymore, though. Like, that's what I'm saying. So in this conversation, I was using it about, I was teaching about resume writing, and I was talking about how, you know, I'm anxious to meet you in an interview, and they didn't understand what I meant.
Right.
So it's gone. The positive connotation associated with anxiety or anxiousness is gone, which is interesting because I think that's part of our problem as a society. Is I think we're vilifying, or not vilifying, we're making some common human experiences seem weird to the individual. So in other words, things that we're all feeling all the time. And, you know, just like, you know, we've all seen the ads on TV where you're talking about depression, anxiety symptoms, right? And you go down the list and every human being has those symptoms.
Yeah.
And is it connected with our medication culture? Is it connected with, you know, pharmaceutical industries trying to sell drugs for problems that might not require drugs? You know, in all likelihood, yes. So that's the slippery slope that we get into when we start talking about mental health too, because is everybody's mental health good all the time?
I would say no.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is a resolution to that. There's fixes, and we'll explore that through the show.
And sometimes maybe it's not even something that you know, there are more cases, like, so there's different degrees, right? We have to be careful not to say that all anxiety and depression can be fixed with you know, working out and training. But on the other hand, something to be said for if you do have these symptoms at an early age and you feel like there's something majorly wrong with you, that's an interesting thing too, because it can you know, it can make you feel like there's more wrong than there is. It's a tricky one. We talked about this in an earlier episode too, about young players and anxiety. Eric, you're good.
Mindset.
Yeah, I think it was the mindset.
Episode?
Yes, I think it was the mindset episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, like I've definitely been through some tough shit. Like I'm 35 now, and like it's always, everything is easier in hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20. And so now, like, I know mental health for me is like it's a continuum, right? And for sure it goes up and down, and I can feel depression. Depression is what I had trouble with when I was like 18, 17, and it was my first year as a recruit on my varsity team. But now, like, as a 35-year-old, these things just seem like a balance, and like it seems like something I can influence. It seems like a symptom of something as a consequence of my life as I'm allowing it to play out. So, you know, like if I'm choosing not to sleep well, if I'm eating like shit, and if I'm being you know, unprofessional or getting behind in preparedness and stuff like that, and then I'll end up making mistakes. These are all things that are going to compound, and I'm going to be anxious because like I'm going to end up making mistakes, right? And then, or if I'm hanging out with the wrong crowd of friends and I'm getting in alcohol and stuff like that, like, I mean, a hangover to me, if you want to experience depression, just have a hangover, because and it's weird when I've even had moments like there's well-known literary like people in the past who have been known to be good writers, and they would drink a lot, right? I think some of them would even like kind of use that induced depression to almost invoke a poetic side, or like be a muse in a way. I used to I haven't been in art in like quite a few years or something, but I can kind of see where that comes from. It's like literally and obviously there's the addictive side or the drug side to things like alcohol. I mean, I guess drugs are another topic that we might get into. I don't know. But so now as an adult, I see mental health as something that I have more of an influence over, but like also looking back at that age, you are so vulnerable in a way, and you're so chemical and stuff that I can't say for sure that like I could have controlled my situation better. Like I just tried to do the best I could at the time, and perhaps I probably did need some counseling or something could have helped me. Right. And then I don't know, I guess I can talk later about like how I got into that state. Anyways, it improved, but Yeah, bottom line, all I'm trying to say is that as an adult, I think I have control over it now. And then at that age, I'm not sure. I don't know whether to say like it was something I could have controlled or it was just like inevitably going to happen and it just played out the way it did, right? And then there's things I wish I knew at that time, obviously, that I kind of know now, and you just have to move on, right? But yeah, it's tricky. It's super tricky, and like, yeah, there's like the different degrees. Like that's, it's so hard to talk about. And I think this is a big kind of, it seems like an elephant in the room in a way, because you have words like anxiety and depression that are kind of hushed hush and no one really wants to say them. But then you have these overly obtuse forms of social media support for, I don't know if I'm going to sound like an asshole for saying this, but like, you know, the college I was at used to have a mental health day. It was like sponsored by a telecommunications company, right? And it was all about taking a snap or a Instagram post,
Right.
using their filter, and it's like the name of the company, and then it's like a blue logo, and then it's like thumbs up for mental health, or
Right.
you know, people would do kind of cute little things, and like there would be all of maybe
Built
5 or
around
10
awareness.
minutes. Yeah, they'd
like
have
they
a
try to-
piece of paper and say, you know, I'm here for, and that part was good, but like ultimately at the end of the day, it just seems like it seems hollow,
Yes. Yeah.
you know. So
That's what I found too. Teaching through that, like sort of the growth and awareness.
yeah,
Awareness is an interesting thing, and it's a very superficial gestures I think we're living through right now, where people want to, and the danger that I
like
saw.
wear the T-shirt and stuff. And
Yeah, the danger I saw was that it was you know, when you're dealing with young people and you want to talk about mental illness, you have to be super careful, because young people have lower self-esteem generally at that age, and they do a lot of different things for attention. And so it's hard to sort out the real.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I said, literally, so I can tell you from my work in the school board, we would have our school board in the last few years that I was teaching would send a survey up on a computer, and for kids to fill out on their own to see whether they had depression, anxiety. And, you know, every question on that survey, any adult who filled out that survey would probably end up with the depression results, because, you know, we all live these horrible lives. But no, it was very shocking to me that, and the students are very likely, like, don't forget, you're dealing with non-developed frontal lobes here. You're dealing with non-developed brains. Not that any of our brains stop developing, but they are very likely to want to be victims. And this is the tricky part, because there are legitimate, and I worked with kids with real anxiety, real depression, and real even schizophrenia. But there were a lot of kids out there who would diagnose or proclaim themselves to be depressed, and they clearly had no idea what real clinical depression was. And this is a reality. So it's very, very interesting. And then on the other side of it, so, you know, Meach, I don't know if there's something you wanted to mention there along those lines, or what you noticed as a parent or athlete, or.
No, I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Okay, sure. Thank you. In the parent side of it, so as a volleyball organization, and we talked about this in the earlier episode too, where, you know, so many times I saw parents sheltering young children from stressful situations. And I'm just going to tell all the parents that are listening right now, the more you shelter your child from situations that they don't like, then the bigger that situation or problem will grow. So I remember, I can tell you a story. One of my children, my older daughter, when she was very small, she was afraid to swim. And she was about 3-4 years old. And I told her, listen, you have to learn how to swim. It's very stressful not to learn how to swim later in life. It becomes a real problem. And the older you get, the more you're going to be afraid of water if you don't learn how to swim. So she didn't want to do it. And I eventually showed her, you know, listen, if I swim with my head up, my butt sinks. We were talking about this earlier. But if I put my face down in the water, then you tend to float a little better, right? And she eventually did it. She cried, she screamed, she didn't want to do it. We made her do it. No. And now she swims like a fish.
Yeah.
And I keep telling her, because that's just one of many moments. I think every parent can relate, whether it's soccer, sports, fear of going into the first day of school, fear of going to camp. Every parent can relate that you have to drag your kids into these moments sometimes, because if you don't, and this is the key, you as an adult are legitimizing that irrational fear, or you're making that irrational fear seem rational. So if I stopped my daughter from, okay, we won't swim. You're right. And I pulled her out of the pool, walked inside the house, and we never went near the water again. What the baby's brain, or what a child's brain thinks is, oh, daddy thinks this is scary too. Right?
Yeah.
And we would see this in volleyball, youth volleyball. Parent would walk into the gym for about 10 minutes and say, yeah, we're leaving. My son is afraid. Yeah, no, I mean, let's not laugh about it. It's real. My son is afraid. And I saw it countless times. And I said, like, listen, we don't care about the money. We don't care about anything else. But I'm just going to tell you that if you pull your kid out, then you're teaching your kid that his fears of this social setting are real. And that will only get worse as they age. Or you can send the kid in there, just tell them, listen, I know it's scary. I know it's uncomfortable, but that goes away. And then that kid will be laughing in 15 minutes playing with some new friend they made. I mean, but what we're seeing more and more parents sheltering kids from bad experiences. And this is where the toxic parent idea comes from, right? Among sports fans, among coaches, among teams. And not all the coaches are wrong, right? There are those parents that just can't stand to see their kids going through bad things. And I'm going to tell you right now that every now and then, not catastrophic stuff, obviously, but bad things can be the best things for kids. You just have to develop a longer term view of what they're going through, and even for themselves. And then words like anxiety, and fear can be really, really good things for building up character, building up strength. Not only can be, they are. And they're normal. They're normal.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Like the whole Stop the Stigma of mental health is a great movement, but the problem is it's become superficial, right? Well, they don't mean it. Like you were talking about, it's become corporate.
That's all it's ever felt. And like, I mean, maybe they're like, by doing so, they were able to raise money, but even the whole, I hope the money is being used well, but even that, you have no sense of what it is. You know what I mean? So
is it a PR campaign for a logo?
Yeah. That's what it felt like. Again, I trust that the money raised has gone to something good, but
it always reeks of superficiality too. Like you were saying, like wear a certain color for mental health, and that there's a real psychological. Again, just as a psychology student and teacher, there's something really dangerous when we put colors and logos and something attached to a because what it means is that now you are absolved of all the hard work. You can just wear a pink shirt on Wednesday, a blue shirt, and you can change your social media icon, and you are free from all the hard work.
I mean, I hope we're just old dogs or something, because obviously social media is only going to grow, and it's going to be more and more integrated into our younger kids, at earlier ages, or it's just going to be more fully integrated, right? And so this thing is going to just continue to happen. So I don't know. Hopefully it
well, the problem
works better.
It won't. By definition, if it continues down this social media route, and this isn't the sky is falling. I know every generation says this, but there's something different here, because this is promoting shallower thinking, more superficial thinking. Let's face it, social media is a superficial.
Well, and this is right when I was depressed, when I was 18, I was first year at university. Right, engineering student, recruited to play volleyball. I think Facebook came out in maybe 2003 or 4. I forget. I joined in 2005. My first year at this university was 2005 to 2006.
That's early for Facebook. I think wasn't Facebook like 2007?
I'm pretty sure I joined 2005.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure. I could totally compare, but I was, even before then, I was on like social, like chat, like MSN. And then before that was ICQ. I wasn't old enough for that one.
I remember that.
Yeah. But
what about the Napster? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Ripping music and stuff. But and I remember at one point in the second semester, I finally got into student res. I lived with two teammates for the first semester, and then second semester I lived in a make do res, and it was single rooms. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. Well, your daughter got put into a social,
right?
Or yeah, I was in a single room, man, and it was almost like that on top of like Facebook, on top of like being a high grade student, and then all of a sudden I'm like bombing all these classes, and then I'm just more fully committing to my sport than I am my academics. And because I never made mistakes in school and stuff, that I never had to like, I didn't really have to ask for help all of a sudden. I didn't in the past. I could always just like, I was clever enough, right, to always get through and like not only but like do well. And now I'm like not doing well, and it's almost ingrained in me. Mind you, I think it's from like my parents' background or European, to be too proud to,
of course, yeah,
too proud to ask for help or something, or to say I need help. Anyways, it built up so bad that it ended up cascading. I put on like probation and stuff. And then
academic probation.
Yeah, academic probation. Sorry, yeah.
We gotta be clear on
not yes.
Because you're wearing a toque as well, so
yeah. Where's I going with that? But
and then you didn't ask for help, yeah.
Right, and I mistook it. The way my coping. So I think whenever these things like this happen, we cope, whether we voluntarily decide to or not. Hopefully, we voluntarily decide to cope in a corrective method that is prescribed or whatever. I did it in an involuntary way, I would say, in that I diagnosed myself with depression, right? Mm-hmm. And then impressionable at the time, and my sister and I even experimented with vegetarianism when I was 16. So and maybe it was trending or whatever. I was vulnerable to it. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I began to experiment with eating more cleanly. So I tried like vegetarianism, right? Which actually I think it worked out. It didn't seem to have any negative effects. But the other thing is that playing sports, and I'm like a young guy, and I have a fake ID, and I'm in a big city, and all of my senior teammates are all 23, and I'm like, me and two other rookies are like 18 years old, and so we're just having way too much fun, right? Yeah. And I have a budget and all this stuff. Anyways, it's just a recipe for a disaster in a way. I don't know. I thought I was more mature than I really was.
Well, your freedom too at that time, and
and I was very independent or rebellious, and I'd like demanded my own freedom in a way from my parents. So I can't like blame them at all. Like I was pretty brutal at that time to try and rein in, I guess. I was
assert yourself, be an independent person. You were the youngest too, right? So that obviously is something you always want to
big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just a comment on something that Zuby said is that I know he's constantly reminding his kids, I do with mine, is that no one really gets a free pass when it comes to not having to face hard things. There are going to be hard things, but if as a parent, I would say, keep this in mind, that if you have knowledge of what's going on, I'm not saying put your kids into unsafe things, but you know what pretty much of what they can get through. How the end result will be. So if you give guidance to your kids and saying, hey, you know what? Yes, this could be tough. This will be tough, but I'm going to be here beside you. I'm going to see that, nothing is going to be so bad and so terrible that you wouldn't be able to handle it. And when you do that, you show that confidence that you're beside them, you're not leaving them, you're going to be, with the other way so that they can reflect with you. When they get through it, you can say, hey, you got through it. How did that feel? It wasn't so bad. And then you can move on to bigger and even more challenging things.
Does that build momentum between like not only you and your kid, but for your kid as well? Like, cause this is a complete counter to what the scenario you said earlier, which is the parent and kid walk in, the parent's already freaked out. Obviously that impresses onto the kid. This is the opposite. This is the way, hopefully you can do it, is that you walk in, feeling not confident, but, you are there as showing strength or whatever, right? Or not showing fear and showing support, right? But then you get through this, and now, like say, you take your kid to a volleyball clinic or something, and they're all nervous, but you show a tryout, exactly, and you explain that all to them, and then they trust in you and they do it, and then sure enough, they come back and they're feeling awesome. They probably don't even thank you. They're just like, oh yeah, that was so much fun. But
that's right.
Like now, hopefully, I would only assume so that you do that again, and you do that in another scenario, and that kid's gonna build up. I mean, they're all building trust in you, but they're building trust in themselves, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the one sitting there by the door on the side watching. They're the ones they go out onto the court, and it's just them, right? So, yeah. I'm just trying to, again, I don't have kids, so I'm like,
Meach, does it build momentum, Meach, is what Eric's asking for the next time, the next hard thing?
100%. Yeah. It makes it so much easier, little tip for you as a parent to build on that. You're building your own resume. So if your kid can be guided by that and learn from that, they're going to pass that on to their kids. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and like when they come to buy a house, like that's got to be free. When they're an adult, not a kid. I mean, like that's gonna be super freaky. I can only imagine.
That usually happens when they're about 4 or 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a little later, Eric. Let's slow down. No, I was gonna say that part of the problem too is that, and what we're seeing is that the parents' generation is kind of the first generation to be shielded too. Mass media, television, really grew up like parents my age and a little bit older, a little bit younger. They're not used to doing hard things. So it's easier for the parent to pick their kid up and walk out of the first practice, the first tryout. It's easier for the parent to say, we're quitting this team. It's easier for the parent to say, I mean, I'm talking about in the non-toxic coach environment. It's totally fine to quit a team, I think, if the coach has, lost their mind, let's be clear. But if, for that parent that's unhappy because their kid's not playing, and it's like, I mean, the kid that's justified, maybe not playing as much as the starters. Agreed, coaches should play everybody, but it might not be equal playing time. And there's parents who quit those situations. It's much easier for the parent to bail. And talk about doing hard things, the parent has to model doing the hard thing. I always tell my kids and my parent.
Absolutely. 100%.
I tell my kids all the time, like, it would be easy for me to just make you not swim or make you not play volleyball or make you not, quit whatever when you're not. That's the easier thing for me as a parent. The harder thing for me is to talk you through it, sit and watch you suffer a little bit, knowing there's somewhere good. That line, there's always good on the other side of some suffering, right? Everything we go through in life that is difficult, every time in my life, 10 times out of 10, everything I did that was horrible or awful in my life, on the other side of it is something amazing. Not just good, not just tolerable, but amazing. Some new revelation, new way of seeing the world, new way of thinking, better opportunities. So, if a parent is able to sit with that, and this gets into the, like, at the end of the issue, like right in the end issue is the self-esteem of the parent. If the parent's self-esteem can take that, then that's, really what we're talking about, right? It's like, can the parent's self-esteem sit with that? And that's the problem too. It's tied in with this. The anxieties of the parent, insecurities of the parent get passed on to the child, and the cycle isn't broken. So you got to be a secure parent to do it. And it's very difficult, but I'll tell every parent, if you do it, your kid will learn that their anxieties at a very early age, and that's the problem. At a very early age, you want your kids to understand their fears are irrational. I mean, there are rational fears, of course, but let's face it, being afraid of walking into a social setting when you're a little kid is not rational. Being afraid of going to, play a certain sport, to play volleyball or to go into a gym with a house league group, you have to teach your kid that's not a rational fear, right? Well, and you want to be nice. You don't want to be like a jerk and say, well, you want to acknowledge the fear. You're not saying it's irrational fear doesn't mean that it's not valid, right? It doesn't mean that the kid's not feeling
exactly. That's what I was going to say, because you're always going to be nervous walking into a room of strangers, whether you're raised by a parent who models that or not, like, or models it well or not. Like, so, excuse me. So it's just going to be easier if for them to walk to experience that nervousness had you have like helped them already at a younger age or whatever.
Yeah. I think you're connected to what you're saying. Too many parents fall into the trap of saying, oh, don't be afraid, which isn't the right answer.
Right.
The answer is, no, this is, I get why you're nervous, but I did it and I know you can do it. And just that little pep talk. And even, like I said, there's tons of parents that do this. They do have their kids go in it and the kid is laughing 10 minutes later, and that's great. But we see parents bail way too quickly now on things. So parents, just make sure that you teach your kids the value of hard things and doing hard things, and
don't just pick the easiest route.
Yeah.
It may be even difficult for you as a parent, but hey, it could be worth it. I mean, your kid isn't going to die. Mm-hmm. So it's something that could be done.
Yes.
It's something that could be helping them develop further on in life.
Yeah.
It's just like your, there's something wrong with my voice. There's something just like the case of swimming. The longer you postpone it, so it's equally like for a parent who is struggling in their own way to confront these uncomfortable situations, they need to start doing little steps toward that as well. Like you can't go from not exposing yourself to anything, highly stressful, or, like when you go to since COVID, I haven't really traveled, but like, when you go to a new country, like you're just like hyper aware because like everything is different. And like, those are such good, I think that's part of the reason why everyone loves traveling, regardless of the places that they go, is that they expose their whole body and like physiology to this thing, to this hyper aware state of being. And now you also like need to be polite to like get around. So you end up getting these connections, and people vibe off that. They see that you're scared or whatever, and then they help you. And then you find some cool stuff, you eat some crazy food, whatever. You do all that stuff. The trip feels amazing, right? Even though if it was just whatever, like, yeah, I mean, almost everyone loves traveling. So,
but some people love to just go to resorts.
Yeah, well, that's where it's not. that's where it's all comfortable because they make the resort. No, sorry, I'm talking about when you go.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I did not mean resort. I meant like you go do some stuff that you're uncomfortable, right? So it sucks because whenever we talk about mental health, and then in kids or young athletes, I can't help but there's always the connection with the parent, right? And so we're telling the parent what, ideally what they can do. But at the same time, if they have their own history of not exposing themselves to these difficult situations, they need to work on themselves as well. So like, I mean, obviously that's maybe not obviously, but that's what we're trying to talk about here. And that for whoever's listening, like, it's not an easy position to be in.
But that your kid is also your partner.
Yeah. Like your volleyball partner, your beach partner? No.
Could be.
What do you mean your partner? Like,
well, for you can use your kid to go through the experience. Like, let's say if a mother, a father doesn't have volleyball experience, you're growing together by going to the trip.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're in it together.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I think like just bringing it to volleyball, I think one of the best things I think about volleyball for anxiety is that, there's it's a training tool, right? Sometimes when I see kids quitting sports because of anxiety issues, I sometimes think, you know what, that's part of what again, going back to that obstacle is the way expression, like that's where you need to go harder. You need to lean into this. And just, I remember I wrote a big paper on the history of mental health when I was getting my history degree. And it was it came back to the same idea, was that medications and drugs are interesting, and there's a time for them, but there's nothing that replicates the hormonal boost that comes, and the pheromones and happiness hormones that comes from hard physical exercise or work. And this is why, like, I remember like touring some mental health facilities, beautiful gyms, in these mental health facilities, beautiful facilities, even volleyball equipment. And I would talk with the nurses when I was doing my paper, and I was like, so you guys mandate what happens if a patient doesn't take their medication? And they're like, well, then they get punished. Like they lose privileges, okay? If they don't take their medication. This is like 20 years ago. Today, actually in mental health facilities, they still do that. Not for senior homes, but for mental health facilities. Yeah, there's consequences for not taking your meds.
Did you mean endorphins, by the way, or pheromones?
Pheromones, endorphins, what's the other happiness hormone that I'm missing? Serotonin. Yes, that's what it is. So that all comes from exercise, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, but when if they don't, is there any mandatory physical activity? Nope.
Yeah.
Not part of the regimen at all. And that's fascinating to me, right? Because if you interview patients,
crazier.
Well, if you interview patients, they always tell you that they felt best off medication and when exercising. But and again, that's just that's anecdotal stuff, right?
Yeah.
But those studies don't get funded because they're not profit driven solutions. Yeah. And I think we're living in a really tricky time now where profit driven, so we have to be very skeptical just from as a human being. If there's a financial benefit to the solution of behaviors and thoughts and feelings that all of us have, like again, if you don't look at any depression pamphlet, look at any anxiety pamphlet, 9 times out of 10 we all have those symptoms. We all have them. and we're trying to make them seem like they're unique, special, and weird. Okay, I can tell you, I saw hundreds of kids. So one of the biggest things that I noticed when I was a guidance counselor was every kid in that school walked into my office and sat down in that chair and started talking about problems that they thought were unique to them, and they thought that they were weird and awful and crazy.
That I remember.
And I used to tell kids, how many kids, the kids that you're talking about as the cool kids, the healthy kids? What if I told you that just about 90% of them have been in that same chair telling me the same story?
And then you were naming names, right?
Exactly. And I said,
Billy's crazy. Jessica?
No. Yeah, that'd be funny. You know that kid? Yeah. Well, he's no. But they all think that they have this stuff, and they do, but it's not crazy. It's not. And this is where the message of like stop the stigma gets skewed. We went from stop the stigma to everybody's got it and they all need medication. So it's a very slippery slope. And when you say this stuff, you can get in real trouble because people think that you're not legitimizing the issues. No, of course there are real issues. But if you're able to make a TikTok about your depression, you might not be as depressed as you think you are.
Right.
Because I've seen real depression, and it's in my family, and they aren't making TikToks. And you, Eric, you've been there, and I like they're not well enough to do that. No, they aren't. And now, of course, there are people who have up days and down days.
Yeah.
But every depressed person I know would not be out broadcasting it.
No. Right. You'd make a post, and you'd look at the comments, and you would shatter. Essentially.
Yes.
Like
it's dark. It's dark, and it's
so
not
true. They at that age, you think it's just you, right? And that's where I can't say, again, looking back as an adult, like it's controllable. At that age, I think you do need help, and I don't know what it is. I definitely don't think it's, again, for the majority of them, I don't think it's pills and stuff like that, right? Like sports probably got me through a lot of those difficult things. Had I had not played so much sports, who knows or whatever. Because like, I think it's tough. Like everyone, like when you're so many kids, like their parents were just so busy all the time, right? So it's like you're at school and then you barely see your parents. You see them from like 5:30 or like not even like after that. And then even then they come home just to get you to sports. So I think in a way, like I thank my parents so much for that, but I think they kind of knew, like, and it's the best they could do in this situation. It's like, well, we're so busy, we're going to bust our asses off to get the money to get these kids in sports. And at least that's going to help. At least they'll be with their friends and stuff like that. Mind you, if possible, maybe doing more things with my parents could have helped as well. But
you never know at that age, because sometimes you reject, at that, in those teen years, you're pushing your parents away. And I think that's evolutionary.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a lot of stuff. Exactly. This is where I don't know. I was such a weird kid at that time. Right. So it's like,
we all are, all were. Everybody was weird. But I think the key takeaway is that there are a lot of kids with legit serious depression, anxiety issues that are not typical. And then I think in this fog of communication and awareness, we are bringing a whole lot of other kids that aren't, they're not fully developed mentally, and they are giving themselves, they believe that they are this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a very common phenomenon where you have a legit core and then a lot of other people who are misdiagnosing themselves and, falling off and doing some behaviors that they. So it's funny that you mentioned, remember the alcohol and the drinking of artists. There's artists, the artists that were truly great artists. The drinking was a symptom of their pain, and so was the great art. Mm-hmm. Now you have people who get drunk to become great artists. They're trying to replicate the artist, so they do drugs and they do drinking because that's what all their favorite authors did, not understanding that the mental illness was front and center, and the pain and the anguish was there that caused the drinking. They didn't drink so they could write better. They drank to cope with pain, and the drinking might have masked the pain. It was symptomatic, but it also, would liberate them enough to actually write stuff they were probably afraid to communicate or paint stuff they were afraid to paint. So that's where, it's a fine line between, I want to be something, so I'm going to, copycat essentially. And let's face it, teenagers are at high risk. This is why I was always looking at school boards when they were putting in mental health curriculum. I was like, now you're dealing with a segment of the population that is the most insecure segment of our population.
Well, that's just it. You partly get into stuff like that just to fit in.
Yes.
Right, or to get attention, but a lot of it was just fitting in and stuff like that.
No, but in a society where parents aren't paying attention to kids, or where kids are more alone than ever before. What is a child? I used to tell this all the time when I would teach adults about this stuff. What do children do? What do little children, toddlers do when they want their mommy or their daddy? Number one thing,
cry for attention.
Mm-hmm. And when they're, they might even fall down and not be really hurt. Mm-hmm. And and the mom's like, oh, you got a boo-boo? Or the dad's, oh, you got a boo-boo? Let me kiss it. And the kid's like, oh, well, when they get older, that doesn't go away. Mm. We still fake injuries as we get older for attention,
especially if we fostered that type of behavior. Unknowingly a lot of times, but kid needs a cell phone, kids need a car, and that can just be a result of them saying, oh, how can I play my parents?
Yes.
But it's like I would like to say about volleyball. It's one of the things that parents can definitely use as a natural endorphin.
Yes.
To come back to, okay, sport is something fun, it's positive, and it can be a real benefit to make sure that your kid is getting a chance to experience that, even if getting into them they're a little bit nervous, even if it gives them a little bit of anxiousness. It can all be positive when you take a look back at what it did long term for the kid.
Yep. Yeah.
It also points out what are the things. It makes it really obvious to see what the things are that ruin that volleyball experience, like toxicity, right? Like as a parent observing or as a player on the court, like if you have if it's a teammate or a coach or whatever, it kind of instantly kills that vibe, right? And especially as the player, after the game, that game felt good, except my coach was just nuts or whatever. Or this person I play beside is just they scream or whatever, and or they I made a mistake and they were all up in my grill. So but again, the problem is,
did you say all up in my grill?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, wow, that's old. But,
oh no, you didn't.
Yeah. But the problem is some kids will hide that from their parents after the game.
Yeah,
right.
Well, you had that experience in hockey, right?
Yeah. Because for whatever reason, you're too proud.
Nobody likes to. Well, I mean, it's funny because our generation, and you're probably right at the end of that generation, of the people that didn't like to let people know you were hurting.
It was kind of the opposite. Yeah.
And today I think it's becoming more the other way, where I think everybody wants people to think they're hurting.
Yeah.
Again, just because of the social media thing, and it's very easy way, quick way. It's like the way we post selfies, right? Get a lot of reactions from people, right? At least that's why I post selfies. Most of mine are like hugs. I get the hug reaction, like, "Oh, poor bastard. You used to be so good looking. Now you're ugly." Just kidding. For people on the radio, I'm still very attractive.
Yes.
Don't turn on the video. No, but I think going back to what Meach said too, I think sports are the therapy that is It always intrigues me when I see high-level athletes suffering with legit anxiety and depression, and but I don't think that. I still think the sports are helping them a lot, right? I mean, famously, DeMar DeRozan, Mike in volleyball. I mean, Mike, what was it? Mike Dodd and I'm having a brain fart. Beach volleyball partner, Mike Dodd.
Oh, jeez.
You are too.
Want me to?
No. We got this.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's been volleyball players of prominence who've had depression. Mike Whitmarsh. Yes. Mike Whitmarsh.
Well done.
He suffered from depression all those years when he was dominating on the beach, and you do wonder what would happen without the sport in their life, right? And there's been more recent ones than that in the beach volleyball world too. More recent cases of depression and even suicide. But the sport, I think overall, it is the number one thing that you can do. And it, like you said, so there's toxicity in the game, anxieties of people around them, toxic parent, toxic coach, toxic teammate that can ruin things. But the sport is wonderful because every point there's a chance for a reset. I always think that volleyball is one of the ultimate sports because it teaches you, okay, here's some suffering that happened or some success, and now you have to put that out of your mind for the next point.
Right.
Because if you don't, then it'll turn into 10 points or 5 points, 5 errors. And, positivity, it teaches you to maybe hold on to positivity so you can go on a roll. And it teaches you also to shake off the bad. And I think that's a cool thing about volleyball is that it has that aspect to it.
Yeah, I feel that, like, I can't imagine my life. I'm very biased, but imagine my life without volleyball and what it taught me going forward, because not only was a tryout a challenge, not only was a particular clinic on if I was going to mess up or not be a challenge, but then it gave me that courage to do drama.
I thought you were going to say do drugs. Do drugs.
Do drama.
I had no problem with that.
I thought it was Breaking Bad. Anyway, no.
No, to do drama, to do public speaking, to do this show.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true, right? There were nerves about this show.
Interviews.
Man.
Because that's a pressure situation.
Yeah.
But I interview very, very well because of that background, because of being having those challenges early.
You think you interview well?
Very, very well.
I do.
Okay.
Give me a try.
So no. Everybody says we get too far off topic, so we can't. Even though it'd be funny.
Oh, yeah. And we got to do that. I mean, it gives us that chance to speak about other things, which,
When did you notice that you started going off topic?
I noticed back in 1983. I think
where are you looking?
My first
where are you looking?
It gives you, I think it builds confidence because you even if you have a teammate who is toxic, you realize that you control your own little area, right? So it's like they're them or whatever, and I'm sure if it gets so bad, they'll just be carted out of the game or something. But you can control your own.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, maybe it won't. Actually, it sucks.
Superman will beat them up.
But if it gets to that point, it's bad. But like at the end
in
of the
real
day,
life, the player would be named as team captain and will be in charge of every practice.
Oh god, that'd be brutal.
That's real life. No, but that's the key. So the key is, here's what I always like to tell people too. Shift that negative. So when you have a toxic coach, when you have a toxic parent around, I mean, if it's your parent, obviously it's a whole different story. Or when you have a toxic teammate. Well, these are positives. These are positives.
Yeah.
This is what life is made of. If you go through life with no obstacles, no shitty stuff around you, then the minute something shitty hits you, you're fucked. So you better have a lot. Like I
Yeah,
hate to
yeah.
tell. I hate to tell. I don't want to say the more shit the better, because obviously there's different levels of shit, and we don't, abuse, and that's totally different. But every time that again in life where you have these bad situations, start thinking longer term. Whether you're a player or a parent, understand that this is just a little dot in a very long line of life.
Yeah.
And that toxic teammate, that toxic coach could be a very good lesson for you. And sometimes, like for me, I'll be honest with you, we had a team that where the coaching was so poor that I did ask my daughters, like, do you want to quit? And before I even asked them, they said they wanted to quit because it was getting to the point of no value here. But the lesson there, and again, just as young daughters, and this was a male coach who screamed at everybody and was screaming the wrong advice, by the way, all the time. I was sitting there, couldn't believe the stuff he was saying. You're also got to teach your kid to walk away from stuff when it is toxic to a point, right? But they still see the value in having that toxicity in their past, right? You learn. It's the only way you learn is from bad stuff. We don't learn from good stuff. Everybody, it's funny. Everybody talks about, we learn best from our mistakes, but then we spend all our time trying to protect our kids and ourselves from mistakes. So what does that say? That nobody's going to learn.
Or we're not listening.
They got to
to
make the
age-old
mistakes.
wisdom.
They got to make the mistakes.
Yeah. And feel free to be able to do it. Playing free is part of that whole philosophy.
Yeah. And it's good for mental health, right?
Those,
to learn to embrace mistakes and fear.
Those difficult. So 'cause stress is a normal thing. We need to encounter it. And I think but we need to have it resolved or each, like in the case where you had that terrible coach, you resolved it by, you tried, but then the resolution was to just, okay, I guess this time we have to drop this team. Like,
well, the lesson for me in that case was I needed to teach my daughters not to stick around for toxicity.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean.
As a father of females, I wanted them to know that if there's a toxic, and I hate to say toxic male, but if there's a toxic male there who is a bully, who is abusive, who is treating people like crap, you got to walk away. But who cares about the money? Who cares about the game? We'll find other places to play.
But we're trying to say that like stress or these difficult situations are good in a way, but they can't go on to become chronic.
No,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
and
there's a limit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, otherwise, that's all.
Because then you cross.
Because
that's good. Because then it crosses over into I like abuse.
Then it turns into abuse.
I like it. I'm used to suffering. So there needs to be, and that's where the self-esteem, and like my daughters were raised in a world where they were told to do things for themselves. Like I said, I remember the day they were walking down the hallway after this horrible tournament where the coach was just off the rails. Like it was getting progressively worse. And this is like in February, so still a few months left in our club season, or a couple months left in our club season. I didn't even have to say the word. I looked at them and they both said, they were on the same team at the time, "Can we quit?" And I was like, it's funny that they thought it at the same, because they knew the limit, and they knew that this is now not productive.
Yeah, right? You knew you didn't have to run them through the questions of, hey, is this the right thing?
Is this worth it? We were all this is not productive.
They already had a measure or a bar where they knew it would, because of the bad experience, they knew, hey, this is the point where we call it
self-respect.
Yeah.
Self-respect.
Yeah.
You guys were at that tournament, by the way.
Yeah.
You guys saw this descent at the end, and just it was. I think it was pretty safe to say that wouldn't be a place anybody would stick around, and other people started leaving the team in droves too. But so I think volleyball is a great sport for that, because it does have that shake off, get to the next point aspect, and you will encounter enough crap. In the sport, like all sports, you'll encounter hardship, legit, through competition, and hardship through dealing with others. That's why team sports are so great. Individual sports are a whole different ball game, right? Beach, we'll get more into beach episodes later, but we'll talk about the dynamic between partners on the beach is a funny, deep, interesting. Yes.
It is interesting. It's funny.
It's a lot on two people. Like it's all invested in a partner. At least in indoor, you got 6 people that you can sort of,
And there was like no coaches back in the day. Now there are.
But beach still for youth, it's not a ton of coaches. So it's pretty cool.
And looking at again in the workplace, I think most people generally work closely with about 6 people, even 10 people, and 12, everything would be kind of a scenario where you have to learn the different personalities. You have to learn the different types of scenarios that you would go through in the workplace. So it's a great scenario for later in life and dealing with those type of things.
Dude, I didn't even realize
That's
this.
why Meach interviews so well.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I didn't even realize, but like I
You interviewed well for this.
I made the team.
I made my own job.
That's right.
Oh, sorry, Eric, you were saying.
No, just like I switched jobs recently, and I did, like this is my first time really realizing the strength that my athletic achievements hold. I never used to put them on my resume.
Yeah, we talked about that. I told you this. Yeah, Eric.
I don't even know.
You were asking me about.
And then
should I
it
mention-
came up. It came up huge. It was like, oh, like it was a big like, well, not big, but it was just something they were interested about.
Right.
It's the number one thing they look for is like team sports is like one of the number one things that you can put on a resume because of what it teaches you. Teaches you to delegate, teaches you to accept responsibility, show up on time, work with others, struggle through hardship. Literally sports is all a metaphor, right? Like literally we call it like, points, right? Like what's the point? Winning, losing. And I love it in soccer and hockey because they literally call it the goal. A goal. And winners and losers, it's life, right? So I think parents can do a lot to help out young athletes in terms of modeling strength and sort of making sure that you as a parent pull your kid through situations where fears that they need to overcome and fears that are somewhat irrational, meaning not legitimate fears like you were talking about, Meach. There's no serious consequence that's going to come from this. That's right. Because the fear that you protect them from will only grow in its significance. I think we can all see this in our own lives. Whenever we delay something or push something off, it becomes massive and overbearing, and it leads to real anxiety later. Like, you got to nip that in the bud, basically, is the message here, right? Nip that shit in the bud. Let your kids suffer a little bit early, and they will not likely have irrational fears as they get older.
Get up in that bud's grill.
Get up in that. All up in here. What was the other thing? There's something else I was going to say about that.
I think you were going to mention that, generally for all the children named Bud, this is not a reference.
No, it is about that kid named Bud. No, I was going to say this. One thing you mentioned, Eric, too, about building momentum. I spend like half my days reminding my kids of past fears that they overcame.
Okay.
Yes.
Especially and you do too, Meach?
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah, same here. Like, so I will constantly remember this, and this, and you were terrified of it, and then you did it.
What's
and
with
the
that
fear was
human
gone.
tendency to not
We like to
this
see
shit?
the negative. We like to see negative.
Yeah.
I mean, especially during my kids' homework, I remind them, how did you get from grade 1 to 2 to 3 to 4? Because you were accomplishing all the time, right?
Yep.
You had challenges like this.
Yep.
Yeah.
You had to do reports like this. You had to write essays. You had to do public speaking. But now you've forgotten about it because you're over it.
And because teachers can't fail anybody anymore.
Hey, that's a great thing. That's
The
right.
school system figured out that it was too expensive to fail kids, so they just started moving them through because it costs too much to fail kids.
Yeah, too much of a hardship.
Yeah.
I don't want to fail anybody. So let's just take that away.
That's part of it, though, right?
Yeah.
The system, because of economic constraints, moves kids through
Wait, are
academically.
you getting off topic?
No, because I'm explaining why
I know,
kids
I'm
experience anxiety. Because when we were young, there were kids who failed grades, and now
You were aware of that, and you're like, oh shit, I better not.
And it
But-
motivated us, But now, if you take a system away with, if you take all consequences out of system, like imagine if we stopped keeping score in volleyball.
Oh my God.
How hard would kids be working? Not very hard, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of I was just making a joke there, but yeah, you're right. Your kids forget what they've accomplished. I always point out I always go through things in their lives where they definitely wanted to quit. They were definitely afraid, and they pulled through and they did really well.
Yeah.
And that every time they keep forgetting, right? A new anxiety, a new stress will come up, and I'll point to something you know, that they did. I sometimes will point to things I did, but that doesn't work too well because then they just think you're bragging.
Yeah.
Well, I can't help it. I'm successful.
Yeah, and as parents, they need constant reminding. That's your job. That's your role to get
That's your
into
hard
there.
work. That's your hard work.
The hard work.
Yeah.
It would be easier to just, everything's okay. You know what? I won't even bother, but you need to bother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's harder, and they'll fight you on it, and they'll push you on it. But that's your hard thing. But again, it's tricky because like we talked about this before. Can you impart, like Meach and I have this life story that gets us to being these types of parents, maybe because of the sporting background. So we have that confidence, that self-esteem to maybe be a jerk to our kid a little bit. But somebody without our life story, without our life history, it's hard for them to do it based on who they are, where their genetics, their life story. It's really tricky. It gets into the whole question of, can you teach someone to develop a mindset? That's a whole show we're going to do later. Can you impart that stuff? And that's also a tricky thing for a parent. You know, this is why step parents have a hard time with kids that aren't their genetics. And this is why, one parent who's, they always blame the other parent. They're like, oh, this isn't my side of the family.
It's your kid this week.
Yeah, that's what me and my wife always do. You know what your kid did today? Whenever they did something bad, it's your kid. When they did something well, that's my kid.
That's right. That's my boy. That's where it came from, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's a lot that parents can do in this role, and coaches too. I mean, anything, you ever have any good coaches that helped you deal with things, or anything, Erik, in your experience? Did you have any coaches along the way that knew about what you were going through?
I confronted one of my coaches about it one time, and they just looked at me like,
confronted me, not confronted, but
sorry,
asked about it.
Yeah.
Confronted sounds like they were the root.
I was revealing it. Yeah, no, it sounds wrong. I asked them about it one time. I asked them to talk to them privately, or just side of the court, and I explained, and then they just kind of stared at me with a blank face, and they're just like, they didn't know what to say. I was asking them a question about focus. I was basically saying I didn't know anything about ADD or ADHD. I didn't have a phone or access to internet at that time. But I was just saying hey, I have a hard time focusing. Is there anything I can do to focus? I feel like my brain is all, I think it was 16 or 15 or something.
What year is this ballpark? Where are we here?
It's probably
16.
No,
20 years ago?
Sorry, it's probably younger than that. So it probably would have been 2002, 2001, stuff like that.
Okay, so you're 14 then? Is that right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So this is why you didn't have a phone at the time, because smartphones weren't a thing.
Yeah, I didn't have a phone till
2008. It's the smartphone era.
Yeah, I didn't even have it in first year university.
Okay.
But
so they didn't feel equipped to.
They did not feel equipped. Yeah, and this is why I think for sure teenagers are crazy, and they're like you said, their frontal lobes all messed up and they're hormonal and stuff. Because I think I even asked I asked my parents about it, and it was difficult for them to try and deal with it. So I was just a crazy
What
kid
were you saying to them? What was specific? You were asking about focus?
Yeah, I asked my coach about focus, and then I just...
What was your problem? What did you feel was the problem?
I feel like I wasn't able to. I feel like I would just lose focus. And one coach, the whole average rally lasts 8 seconds, right? Hearing that helped me quite a bit. But I think this was already, when I was asking him about focus, I think in a way it was actually linked to depression or anxiety and stuff like that. Because I think my point was that my issue is that I kept having thoughts in my mind that I didn't have control over, and these were typically negative, right? And so I wanted to focus on the sport. I didn't understand the concept of what focus is or how the brain works. The brain is just things come in and out, and it's just a matter of how you dwell on them that gives them presence in your awareness, right? And so I kept clinging again, like you were saying, we cling to negatives, right? And that's what scared me, and that's what I didn't know. So I asked for help on it, but I didn't verbalize it properly.
Well, you were early, right? You were ahead of your time. Not a lot of athletes at that time would have talked about this stuff, and that's why they were shocked by the question.
Yeah,
because you're about 5-10 years earlier than most people started talking about it.
I think what I said is like, hey, like, should I like listen to music and try and do homework at the same time? That way it'll like, I can like exercise focusing on the math and like block out the music or something. I was coming up with weird ideas.
No,
and they were just like, I forget, but they kind of had to just like say something and then like, you know, move me on or whatever. Right. But I remember feeling like the question was not answered basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, and those were both teachers, the coaches that you went to, right?
Yeah.
So they were aware of the issue, probably a little bit about attention and kids and hyperactivity, but maybe they just maybe not in a sporting sense, because in the mind, and this is like in defense of people who are going through legitimate anxiety, depression issues, mental health issues, a lot of times in sports the answer is, well, just shut up and play, like just stop it, and just and that's not necessarily an answer either for kids who have the legit issues. Mm-hmm. And it's a difficult one, but again, I think sports are wonderful. Like, that's funny that what coach told you, the 8-second rally thing.
It was Dauber.
Oh, was it? Oh, nice, good. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, because it gives you a smaller target to focus on, makes it a realistic goal that you can reach. Yeah, that's cool.
Made it something I could comprehend.
Wow, and he had that answer ready, of course. Did he just said that quickly to you, or was that?
No. So I didn't ask him. Dauber just said that.
Oh, he just said it. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
He's not the one I asked.
Right. So he was talking about what was his point there?
He just noticed that it was a 7 a.m. practice with a bunch of
high school boys.
Hyper boys. Yeah, and then we were just like goofing off, and then whatever, it just came up.
Nice.
Because I remember laughing so much in volleyball at that age, like so much. It was awesome.
Morning practices.
But then at the same time, like, you wouldn't get any shit done from a coach's perspective. So I can understand why you'd get pissed or whatever. And then he was just like, hey,
I just need you.
Yeah, like, just do it, because he could see the potential, right? He could see yeah,
it's funny, how a comment like that, not even directed towards your mental health concern, is just like, oh shit, that's funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I
think coach. Oh, sorry, Meach, you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and that's kind of a reflection, because both even though we're different ages, we both had experience with Dauber, who was fantastic. But one of the things that I noticed is that he cared. And coaches, if you want to get the most out of your players, it's to care, basically care about the individual.
Give them the most.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes a long way in the coaches that I remember, especially. And it fell through from my generation to your generation, just because we remember the coaches like that very, very specifically.
Yeah, because I think that's what it was. I think that's the troubleshooting process that went through his mind, is that he has this group of kids that he cares about, and he sees them having fun, but he also doesn't see the activity that is a building activity. It's not meeting its goal. It's not the kids are not developing or whatever. They're just goofing off, having a great time, which is good. But it's also good to exercise discipline, or feel the difficult things, or to do the difficult thing, which is to focus, right? Like, especially at that age, it's hard enough to focus as an adult, right? So then because he cared, he's like asking himself, he's like, what can I do? And then he's all of a sudden, like, stress is what induces creativity, and creativity comes up with answers or things or ideas or whatever. Then you try them, and then you see what happens.
100%.
Yeah. And then, because he's been coaching for a long time, right? So he's probably gone through that a few times.
We should mention too, is Dave Dobson is a local coach that gave so much time, almost to a fault, gave up all his time for coaching in the area, and he coached all of us. So he was my first he was my coaching coach too. Like, that's it. He gave me my coaching certification and just taught me a lot through that process. And not a high level volleyball player. He was more of a basketball guy. Yeah. But he listened.
Not a huge technical coach.
Yeah. He wasn't as still pretty technical, but not a corrective guy. Like, not one to correct in games or to give a lot of feedback, but great coach, and just love the game and a giant in our neck of the woods. So we should give him a bit of a shout out.
Yeah.
Again, not that he'll hear this or anybody else, but
Maybe he will.
Shouting it in the forest. No, but I've talked to him pretty recently, actually. I was able to talk to him a couple times during COVID, and it was good to talk. And, he started up a new club. And, of course, he couldn't stay out. So, but he, the thing, like, sometimes Dave would actually get criticized for caring too much. But that we would take that, right? We would take that over not caring enough. I think a lot of coaches, they like to replicate that tough coach mentality, like the Hollywood image of coach and football coaches, and but man, if you care about your players like in a responsible way and show that you have their best interest in mind, like in your case too, like he was still caring about you in terms of that 8-second thing, and now he wasn't able to coach, he still was caring about the game. And by extension, if a coach cares that much about the game, then that means they care about you, right? And Dave was a good teacher as well, and he wants kids, he's doing that hard thing, like you guys said, like some parents aren't doing and some parents do it. He was going through the hard work because it would be easy, and we know that toxic teams have coaches who just let the kids do what they want,
right?
And good coaches lay down the law.
Because
right? It's a little bit discipline is a big part of this mental health for athletes, right?
What about the other guys who showed up at 7 who were focused, and then you got a group of 4 guys just goofing off, and like they're unaware of it. So you're bringing it into everyone needs to fall in line here in a way.
Yeah, and it's it's funny because
you're taking the learning experience away from them.
And we're talking like it gets into toxic team culture, but there's also a mental health component too, because that does show care. Right, you know what I mean? It's interesting how discipline is a very interesting part of mental health, and it's very closely connected with toxicity, toxic behaviors. It's an interesting overlap. But I think that honestly, still, if we were to talk about, sorry, Erik, go ahead.
No, it is. I think all of this stuff is really connected. Like even the focus, and like I don't know if you would have diagnosed me with ADD or ADHD at the age, I had no idea, but to me, all of those are connected in terms of how I've experienced them. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, as an educator, I know that I found ADHD was fascinating because there was this wave of ADHD diagnoses. Grade 3 is when they were diagnosing kids with ADHD. They would ask the families if they wanted their child tested. The child could be tested. Most times they came back diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and they were put on medications, or they were given laptops because they couldn't focus on cursive writing at grade 3. Okay. And I was like, wow, so you're just guaranteeing that kid will never be able to focus now because you're giving them video games and you're giving them computer access in the school because and the idea was that it's funny because I met a student whose father was a professor in grade 10. And I was given the speech about how, if you label a kid as ADHD early, again, a young mind, then they will become what you tell them they are. Yeah. Just like if you tell a kid they're a pile of shit, or if you tell a kid they're great, pretty soon they're going to start to, after years they're going to believe that stuff, right? And so, these kids were getting told that they were ADHD. And they were, and I would submit to you that in our school system, a kid better be ADHD. Like the kid, I'd be more concerned about the kid who's sitting in grade 3, totally still and silent, not wanting to play outside, not wanting to run, not wanting to, play with stuff.
Be a little haunting.
But we, in our educational system, we call that kid the problem. When really the problem is the kid that wants to sit there and listen at that age, or a school system that requires that. So that's why ADHD system. And ADD, I'm very. I think that we've gone down. There are kids who can't focus on things, but it's funny
there are.
But it's funny what interest does. The kid who can't focus in your class might be the best kid in the school at fixing a car, and then watch his focus or her focus go up, or might be able to play a sport, and watch the focus. So our educational system is biased towards these book learning things. And then the kids take that self-esteem or that crushed self-esteem because they're not good at the 6 subjects that the school system decided that are the most important. And then they show up at volleyball practice and they feel like shit about themselves. And then they think they got depression because they're failing in school. They're failing, their parents are coming down on them. And it's all based on 6 subjects that were decided on by a bunch of teachers. And I'm one of them. I was one of them. So you can't say I'm crapping on teachers here. Teachers went to university. We were the nerds. Okay. And then we go to the front of the classroom and 95% of the students are not those nerds who are going to university and who love book learning.
Right.
They're good at other things. They might be great at other things, but we're still telling them that they're shit because they're not good at English, history, math, whatever, right? It's not a system set up for mental health. And then, so near the end of my career, when we were doing all these mental health days, I'm like, isn't this the same school system that's crushing mental health? Like, isn't this the same school system that tells a 10-year-old kid that they can't focus and they're a failure? Like, look at this language. Did I fail grade 3? Yeah, you failed, Timmy.
Yeah.
Timmy, sorry, you failed.
That word, man.
Fail, right? And even grades and classes. My favorite is classes. We call them classes. Social class, right?
Oh,
like classification classes. We tell them that they...
Yeah, and there was a stigma attached. If you went to M, you were bound for this.
Yes,
If you went to U, you were that. I was like...
Yeah, just the stigma of university college.
Yeah, like...
Community college in the States and Ivy League, all this stuff is all just man-made garbage, right? And it's just one narrow brain. I mean, the tech kids, the kids that go into plumbing, the kids that go into the trades tend to do very, very well, and they can take care of themselves. They build up self-esteem. I meet so many tradespeople today that, were rejected by the school system. And whenever we get in this conversation, they love it because I was a teacher, and I wasn't even a shop teacher. I was a history, English psychology teacher, philosophy teacher. And they like the fact that I tell them that, the school system was set up for you to fail. And so much of the kid's self-esteem is in that world, and then they bring it to sports. And that's the cool thing about sports, and the cool thing about volleyball is that hopefully a kid might not be fitting in with that school world or being labeled as ADHD, but doesn't mean, hopefully they haven't gotten too far into the drugs. I did see kids that were diagnosed ADHD that were definitely different when they were medicated. Like literally I'd have a student come up to me after class and say, hey, did you notice any difference in me today? And I was like, yeah, I did. You were like super quiet. He goes, yeah, well, that's because today I took my medication. I want to see if it was working. I was like, well, how do you feel? But the kid looked sedated.
Yeah.
The kid didn't look focused. The kid was just sleepy. And I'm like, that's what they want. Just calm. They want you to be sedated, not, I said, well, you were definitely quieter, but I don't know how you feel. But you look depressed. Right. So I don't know if we're off topic here, but I think it is connected with the whole issue of anxiety and depression. But the idea is, I think that, if a kid's self-esteem is toast, so if you're a caring coach, if you're a caring parent, and you kind of take that heat off the school system, which is this cold impersonal thing that's set up for a whole other reason. It's a remnant of the industrial age, right? Industrialization, factory jobs. If you can help build your kid's self-esteem through sport and through love and support at home, and if you're a coach who can help foster that, you give that kid, like you said, volleyball was a place that saved you. I'm sure it was for me too, like in my life, like volleyball.
Well, I think like you said, with interest, where things you are interested in is that, like, I always did better in school when I was playing sports, and that carried on through college as well. Like, if I didn't have that outlet, it was the same in my studies as well. I had to study, you can just, you can pick your electives and I forget, the less of your minor.
Yes.
My minor actually saved me. I didn't actually graduate that degree, but that minor is what kind of drove the major, believe it or not, because it was in philosophy and stuff like that. So it propelled it forward, because if I didn't have that, if I was just totally in, because I was in sciences, if I was just in a lab all the time and doing like just bio and chemistry, I probably would have just like done far worse, right? So then, I guess, like your interest helps so much. It just helps you get through the shitty stuff, I suppose, right? Because at least there's something meaningful, something you're getting out of it. And sport is huge, or philosophy was big for me.
Philosophy can be tricky if you're going through depression. Philosophy
that can be
a little tricky.
You know this stage. I don't know if I wasn't like hanging out with you too much, Meach. It was right when I came back from the East Coast, and that's right when I got into Buddhism and stuff. I came back, and I was the biggest failure. My parents probably thought, they were probably worried about me. 100% they were. They were like, I don't know what's gonna happen with this kid, and I had like no money.
And look at you now.
Yeah, and
talking to hundreds.
I was in such poor physical. I wasn't playing sports at the time.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But it probably had a good side to it, because that was my first time being exposed to philosophy, and I was just mind blown. I'm like, how is this not something taught in high school?
It was later.
It was later, yeah. But again, like if we're just looking at schools as a pure
it wasn't. Yes,
thing.
no. I started teaching. I was the first one to teach it anywhere around, like in our area. Like I created the whole course because I majored in philosophy, and it's great. But I know a lot of students, and when I was a student in university, a lot of classmates.
It was also depressing.
You can get messed up, if you're not in a good state of mind.
We were reading like Dostoevsky and stuff, and that was like the darkest stuff ever. But in a way, very positive. Like,
yes, yeah, oh yeah. All philosophy is positive. It's just if you're not in the right frame, you can get depressed too. Because when you tell someone that they're nothing. It can be a positive or a negative. That's what I used to tell kids all the time. And perspective. So like just going to volleyball, like, so again, the mental health thing is if you can get to a point where you're saying things like that, like, nothing really matters. Okay. If you say that to someone, it's a philosophical point can be a nightmare. Yeah. If you take it the wrong way and say nothing really matters, or it can be an amazing thing if you say, oh, nothing really matters. And that's sort of what I tell young players. Like I tell them, like, listen, there's a gazillion games going on right now all around the world of volleyball. They're playing on dirt paths in India right now, and they're playing on mountaintops in the middle of nowhere. Your game, this big volleyball game that you're playing right now, this point that you're worried about, it's actually nothing. Even in your life story of volleyball, it's nothing, this point. Yeah. And it's nothing. It's even like not even nothing in the grand scheme of volleyball. So get over yourself, right? Nobody cares. I mean, and again, nobody cares nobody cares about this outcome.
Most ultimate harshest.
Yeah,
truth.
well, no, it's not harsh. I mean, people care about you as a player. People care about you as a person, but nobody cares about this. And if they do, even they won't care in 3 seconds. They'll be worried about traffic when they leave here, and about their lunch tomorrow. You put it in perspective, and that's why philosophy is great for volleyball players. If you can get into, and that's why sort of we created this show, right? Like, let's be honest. Like, some people think we get off topic, but it's because we're bringing philosophical ideas to a game that where it's all about serve it, get it over, get the point. But there's so much more to help you get the point there. There's so much more. Like, if you have the mindset that none of this matters when you go out and play, I guarantee you're going to play so much better. And tension,
it does all tie in, because like these kids that you'd be talking to, there's probably some thought that's in their mind that they're giving way too much attention to, and it's totally taking over their awareness, and it's probably negative, it's self-conscious, it's like they're worried about their serve, but you're just trying to say, hey, this really means nothing, go free.
Yes,
it's like, just be free, let those thoughts, just let them go, right?
Yeah. And that's why we take some flack on social media when we make posts about, not caring, and about how this is just practice with scoreboards. And people think that we mean that it's not wanting to win. Actually, it is the most competitive mindset you can have, because what you're really trying to get players to do is win everything. Yeah. Because they're not afraid. Because when you think that things don't matter, you don't, like, again, you said before, and we said it earlier, like, we gravitate to the negative. So when your thoughts tend to go to the negative as naturally, it's an evolutionary thing. That's how we protect ourselves in nature. Yeah, we survive by thinking about the negative. Like, if you hear steps behind you, you think you're going to get murdered. That's a survival instinct, right? You don't think, I wonder if that's someone with a cake. You think someone's going to steal my wallet or murder me. Right. When you see someone lurking in the shadows, you don't think, hey, must be a friend. That's our go-to. So if you can get someone not to think so much or care so much, it's the ultimate winning mindset. It's not so when you say think of a game as all games are practice, that's a mental health tool, right? Because the people who think everything matters, they're uptight, they're anxious, they make more mistakes. And then they feel bad about themselves, and it compounds the mental health problem, right? Meach, anything to add there?
I think you said it well.
I just can't. I'm just saying too much. I feel so rambly.
No.
But I get very, very emotional.
Yes.
Speaking of mental health. So I guess I sort of touched on it too. So we talked about the coaches. We talked about the parents. Players, obviously, if you're someone that's dealing with this stuff, I highly suggest, obviously you need to talk to someone about it. Eric, you went to a couple of people, tried to reach out to people.
Yeah.
In this day and age, you're lucky because there's more places you can go talk about it.
Yeah.
But also, I really, really can tell you this from experience in my own family. I've seen it with depression, anxiety. Try to get physical exertion into your life. We've all had days, right? Like I've had days where I'm down in the dumps, probably a form of depression that is less severe than major, but we all go through those. And a good workout just changes things. Or I've had nights where I don't want to play volleyball. I'm like, we've all had this, right? God, I don't want to go. And then you go and you come back and you're on this high, right?
Yeah.
It's a real high and not drug induced. The sport itself does it. It's the heart race, physical exertion, right?
Yeah.
Meach?
I've felt that some of the best times that I have had in volleyball is when I've been so exhausted and you're completely done until the next day.
Well, not anymore. For us now, it's like 3 days, 4 days.
Yeah,
The next day, we're still crying on the bathroom floor, going, "I'm never playing volleyball again."
Hoping the pain will go away.
It's like drinking for young people. But,
Yeah.
You can play endlessly at that age, though. Yeah, in a way.
yes. When you're a young
I
athlete.
feel like you could. Well, you could in many ways.
But
Play your
so we
shoulder.
should talk about that because you mentioned playing endlessly, burnout, right? A lot of kids are. So you want to hit
playing
you want to
too
hit the
much.
gym, you want to exercise. I think that's a great cure. But if you are exercising and playing too much and have this, then burnout in terms of mental health can kick in too, and that's where you got to temper it, right? Because sports is a healthy escape, and working out is a healthy escape. But like any other escape, it can become if it becomes an addiction or something that you go to all the time, physical injuries,
Yeah,
mental stress can increase.
the benefit's is gonna be less and less from it, right? Like you need. There's so many like sayings about
Balance.
this, but you need time away from it, right? Yeah,
There is such a thing as too much.
for sure.
Yeah, and we're gonna do a show on that too because a lot of parents are asking that in the Facebook groups and online. And by the way, if anybody has any topic that they want us to talk about, info@volleyballogy.org. Info@volleyballogy.org. Send us an email or drop us a line on Facebook because we do read those comments, or on YouTube as well. Because if
We
you
care.
Yeah, we care. We care, and also too, like we're running out of ideas. Actually, we have too many ideas, but no. But feel free because burnout is a topic that comes up a lot, and a lot of people are asking: is there too much volleyball? Should I not play club? Should I not play high school volleyball, especially in the States? There are signs. I think the number one answer is really got to listen to the kids sometimes. Once they reach a certain age, right? Once they reach this age, once they're teenagers, when they're little, I think you need to push them gently into the right direction of let's see if you can overcome this fear. Once they hit 12, 13, 14, and they have been pushed through those things, if they're telling you they want to break at that age, then you got to listen because they're old enough to say, Now, again, there are some times where a 12-year-old might think they want to quit and you have to test that water to see how it is. But if their mental health is becoming a problem, or if you're noticing some signs of anxiety, depression, avoidance, you have to dig and see what the issues are. Could it be a coach? Could it be a teammate? Could it be bullying? But you have to listen to that kid because burnout is real. Especially, I think the burnout is really a risk once athletes get into that 15, 16, 17, those age groups right there. That's when you might start to see that the lifetime of volleyball. Like my daughter didn't want to play varsity volleyball this year, and I totally got it. I said, you know what? I could tell that she was like, wanting to do it maybe for me. And I said, listen, you don't need to play volleyball for me. I love you no matter what. I don't need you. I played volleyball. I don't need, and I'll be honest with you, the way varsity sports are today, I said to her, I don't even know if I would play varsity today. Because it's become like they treat them like pro athletes, right? Like when we played, we had a couple gym sessions. We practiced several evenings a week. But
It's hardcore now.
Now it's like they sit down and they show them signing things on paper like they're pro athletes. You have players announcing their retirements when they're done a 3-year career. I'm like, they feel like they are pro athletes because they are working out every day. They're training. Some teams do 2 a days. Like, it's a lot. So I said, like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. So that's a very important thing. If your kid is telling you they don't want it, that's the sign. Right?
Yeah.
Once they hit, especially 15, 16, 17, their heart's not in it.
Yeah. Especially when they have that energy to be able to do it. If they don't want to do it, it's just not their passion.
Yes. And you can't make someone want something.
Yeah.
That's why I always tell parents, you can't
Especially
make...
at that age, man.
But no, you can't at any age. Like, you can't...
I know make someone... Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you can't make someone want something. Like, in the early days, the reason why you want to drag them through a bit is because you're teaching them a life lesson, right, about pulling through. When they're 14, 15, 16, now you have to teach them a different life lesson of, because I can't afford, like, the minute you try to say, come on, like, it's like saying,
Like it.
Yeah, it's like,
Damn it.
it's like going up to someone and saying, why, love me, like, I don't love you though. I can make you love me. No, you can't. It's the same thing. So you gotta listen to your kid that way, because that mental burnout, that is that can be really bad when parents start pressuring kids and putting their insecurities and the things that they didn't do onto their kids. I have an easier time telling my kid not to play varsity because I already played volleyball. I played high level. I played overseas.
Yeah.
I don't need the validation of my kid playing, and that's what she didn't understand. I was like, listen, you don't need to play for my love, right? If I, I'll just love the other one more. No, I'm just kidding.
That's all. Easy
Great.
fix.
No. Yeah. So that was just a thing that I had to talk out with her, and she was happy to hear that. So, yeah. Anything else, Erik, you'd like to add?
Well, I'm just thinking of like ways to deal with it at that age. And again, we're like, I'm not a doctor, but from personal experience, I would think one big thing was just like getting the right amount of sleep.
You mentioned that several times in the show. Like, sleep is...
Did I mention sleep already?
Early, not this episode, but other episodes. Remember in the prep tryout show, you were mentioning sleep.
I think I mentioned it a lot personally because of how...
It helped?
No, because of how independent I was and how like I would be so like obstinate with my parents, and like I think I was just so relentless with them that they almost in a way like had to like just give up and be like, okay, like fine, you're just gonna like do your own thing. Like I would stay up like ridiculously late, like on school nights or whatever. I would be like playing like strategy games on like a computer or something, stuff like that, right? Because it was filling a need for me in a way. It filled there's a part of my brain that just like
The volleyball void.
or maybe like
now when you say strategy games, Erik, you mean adult films?
No, I didn't know how to access those at that time.
What do you mean at that? So now you do?
No,
I'm just
kidding. No.
Careful, Erik.
No, now I'm like learning. I'm respecting sleep way more now. That's another reason why I'm saying it. But I think at that age, like, had I have just respected sleep a little bit more, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I slept in notoriously when I could, right? Yeah. So I'm sure my body forced me to get it back when I could. But just to kind of smooth things out,
well, there is a sleep deprivation link to mental illness, right? Like if you don't sleep enough, your liver releases enzymes that can literally
And if you're up at 2 a.m. or whatever, and you have a screen, and the screens back then, my God, remember the monitors? They were massive. They're probably like a type of brightness that I don't know. Actually, who knows? But
no, they were less friendly to sleep time. Like, we're more aware now.
The body's supposed to shut down, especially developing body and brain. So, and then it's gonna smooth out those kind of like, because I'm sure like on the next days, I was just like not a nice teenager to be around and stuff like that. Right.
No, I think that's actually a really good point. I think sleep, it ties in with our burnout too, right?
Yeah.
If kids aren't sleeping enough, getting rest in general.
And then
Huge
like,
connection to mental health.
food as well. And like another thing that I'm learning now to really respect is stop eating after like 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, that works. Then I go to bed around like 11 or something.
Because the digestion while sleeping and sugars and...
Yeah, because what I'm finding is that, again, it's only a short experience, but so far, like I have continuous sleep. If I eat later in the day, I'll wake up halfway through the night. Yep. And then it's embarrassing how long it's taking me to realize, but it's...
No, I don't think so.
Because I was like, oh, it's the phone or it's the TV, and like, or I don't even have a TV, but like, it's just like, it's whatever else I'm doing but...
What?
No. I mean, like whatever else I'm doing, meaning like, cause I would have tea before bed, but I would put like honey in it or something. And now I realize I'm like, no, there's sugar in this.
Yes.
And then, or I would take like, supplements for sleep and stuff like that. So now I'm like, no, don't do any of these things. Cause you are adding chemicals to your body and then they get digested at a certain amount of time. And then things will happen and it's enough to pop you out of sleep. Right. So whether it's honey or whether it's like, there's like sleep or herbal sleep things and stuff. I don't take sleeping pills or anything, but like, or even magnesium, they always talk about magnesium powder. Or they talk about taking bone broth soup or collagen because it's the amino acids. No, don't do, like, for me anyways, this is what I'm doing now. I'm not taking anything, just water or like black herbal tea or something. Right.
Yeah.
And then I think for me so far it's working.
Yeah. No, I think that there's a really good point in there that we're going to talk about in other episodes too. Like, the more you add things from the external, the less your body does.
I kept overcomplicating.
Yeah, and that's where we get into this, the mental health and medications. That's where I do tell parents, even when I was a counselor, I told them, so, and even now when I talk with people informally, and I guess I counsel some people informally who come to me for advice on things, I do tell them, like, the more you take that external supplement or drug or medication, the less the internal will work because your body quickly adapts and it says, oh, I don't need to do this anymore because it's coming from somewhere else. So then your natural, happiness hormones and your natural hormones are going to be reduced in production. That's why it's nice to do it the exercise route if you can, because at least you're training your own body to produce these things versus the opposite where you are telling your body through medications to shut it down. Again, we are not doctors, but I did study this a little bit, so I don't feel too unqualified to see it. And it's just a natural universal law. That's why you don't need to be a doctor to understand the universal principles that anything that gets help from the external, like if you cook, I think this came up in another episode too, like if you cook for someone every day of their lives, and then one day when they're 50 years old say, okay, now it's your turn to cook, they won't be able to do it.
Of course not.
Because they're trained to not do it. They've been supported from the external too much, so their internal drive or their internal abilities are hampered. And that's sort of universal. You don't need to be a doctor to understand that principle. So that's why the beauty of sport and volleyball and training is that it does trigger internal stuff. Which is a great help. And then for your sleep too, like that's why going for a walk outside before, a few hours before bed, fresh air, external activity,
walking,
even extra. Do you ever have trouble sleeping, Erik, when you're on a great workout routine? Or do you pass out?
Yeah, I sleep better.
Yeah, I pass it. Like when I work out, I am out like a light.
Yeah.
And as everybody can tell, I work out a lot, as you can tell, right?
And the body is just so amazing, though. Like you don't, like during the day.
Sorry, did you say my body is so amazing?
I said the.
Sorry, I thought you said my body.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I did not. But the body's so amazing that it's doing all of this stuff like for us, like during the day when we're awake. No, not your body. It's getting ready for the sleep cycle, and then while we're sleeping, it's getting ready for the daytime cycle. So just like let it do its thing.
Yeah, and a lot of new great books on sleep too that are out in the last few years that came out that really talked about the importance of sleep for recovery and what's really happening to our brains while we sleep, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. So, okay, and Meach, you haven't slept for 4 years, right?
No.
That's why you look like hell.
What are you talking about? Great.
I mean, sorry, not hell. That's why you look like you're on fire. Yeah, I think, I mean, we didn't get into social media, but I think that social media.
Yeah, I had that on here.
Yeah, social media is an interesting thing for kids, and parents have to be, not to rail against social media too much, because I think everybody does it, and kids adapt, but talk about superficial things and making kids a little more anxious. In our day, it used to be that, our media was the magazines and movies and celebrities, and everybody knew that they were kind of fake. Everybody knew that it was airbrushed magazines, at least by the time we came through. Everybody knew that these were just celebrities. But now kids are like anxious and upset because the kid in their chemistry class looks amazing online because they got filters and everything. So it's a weird thing, and they get bullied over appearance over their neighbor, and a real person looks like that online now. You know what I mean? Not celebrities. At least we had that gap. So social media is very interesting because it also leads to this copycat culture. Like there's not much original thought anymore. Kids are all doing the same TikTok dances around, as you can tell. Meach.
Well, the copycat thing's always been around, right?
Like but it's different now. Like social media is taking copycat to a whole, you'll see it if you
popularity.
You'll walk down a street and you'll see kids doing this exact same TikTok dances that your kids are doing, or they're all just copying like the same sound that's big on TikTok or something, and they'll make a video and it goes viral. Everybody makes the same video. Everybody does the same dance.
Just tune out.
Well, it's just interesting because it is connected with the because talk about. We think that kids are more open to things right now, but they're not. They're actually so much pressure to be in the bubble. And so like even depression wise, and like I know a lot of kids, friends of my daughter's, anxiety, depression, it's like a cool thing. Like there's people getting big followings posting about depression and about anxiety issues, and they're getting these huge followings on social media. And you're like, so if you ever get better, then you lose the following.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. So social media, it's tricky for players because, and your attention span, like Erik talking about your experience too. If you're scrolling through image after image, your attention span diminishes. Increases anxiety too, right? Because you're...
I can only wonder what effect that would have had on me at that age when I was having those focus issues.
Wow.
I probably just would have been addicted to the phone, and probably just like, I don't know, less likely. And then maybe, cause like if it consumes a lot of mental energy, right? Which I think social media does in a weird, like how driving can be really exhausting. I think kind of social media kind of does that. So then when you're at sports or whatever, at practice or in class, your brain's kind of already exhausted in a way, right?
Yeah, you think you're in downtime, but you're not getting any downtime.
No, you don't have that ability to now hyper focus on digging that ball like in those drills and stuff.
Mental exhaustion.
That's just a hypothesis.
No, it's not. It's true. Yeah, your mental exhaustion. If they measure brain activity on people on social media and they're not doing nothing, they're not. Their brain is straining.
Oh yeah.
So then that's why when you put down your phone, you're like, what the hell am I doing? You've been on your phone scrolling for an hour, and you put it down, and then you're like exhausted still and cranky.
Yeah.
But the other big thing that's happening too that ties in with the toxicity of behavior with parents and coaches and players who are out of control. One of the things social media does too is it makes people and relationships disposable. So what I've noticed is like, if it's so easy to scroll, okay, so I'm scrolling through, I'm like, oh, this person's dog died. Oh, this person is, going through trouble. Oh, this person's happy and dancing. Scroll.
On to the next.
On to the next. And so what it's doing is it's diminishing every individual's experiences.
Yeah.
So when you walk into a gym and when you are pissed off at a coach or you're pissed off at another kid on the team, we're much more likely now to say, well, go voice how we feel without reflecting, without thinking, because our people are disposable to us. And we're seeing it across the board in relationships too. Swipe right, swipe left. People are disposable because they're so easy to see now.
Damn.
Remember when we were home, like when we were kids, it's really hard to think about life, pre-phone, even for us.
Yeah.
But like, remember there was a time where you were home and you were home. And that's where you were. That was where all your focus was.
Yeah.
You were not, quote unquote, fake interacting with the world.
Yeah.
That's why we got up and went to the mall. That's why we got up and played sports, was to interact with people.
That's why malls, like, a lot of them don't exist anymore.
Yeah, or they're adding a lot of tricks to stay relevant. Right? They're making them look amazing. But our relationships are through the phone. And so what's happening is when we encounter real people in real life, we don't see them as valuable. We don't see their story. I'm going to shit on the coach. I'm going to shit on that player.
Yeah.
I'm going to scream at that other parent's kid, and we don't even see it as a mental health issue of the parent. We don't see it as a mental health issue when a kid freaks out at another kid or, is behaving like off crazily, right? Because we just see it as asshole behavior, but there's something else there. There's a lack of value of another human being because they're disposable now to us. Yeah.
We need a whole other segment just on social media.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. Remember you mentioned that you didn't think it would be a full size. I said I got a lot on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's where like phone use, like I highly recommend for coaches. It's really good for team culture too, to like, all right guys, phones are away, practice, even on tournament days, unless it's to reach your parent or something like that, like try to have specific time. You're not going to get rid of it, but make it a regimented time where I think even adults, remember we talked about this too, adults should do this. Adults should not just answer every text. Adults can put their phones on airplane mode and they can answer texts between a couple hours at the end, in the middle of the day and maybe at the end of the day.
Right.
That way you're not running around like a crazy chicken, because it really...
I started doing that,
Yeah, I did it for a little while too.
Yeah.
It's a good way to live because then you're in control of your day. The text messages, the emails aren't in control of you.
Yeah.
Talk about mental health. I mean, there's another good tip.
For sure.
Yeah, but I think we talked quite a bit about this, but the bottom line is, I think if we were to sum it all up, burnout is a thing for young athletes. Parents have to be mindful of that. If your athlete is still young, you want to make sure that you gently bring them through tough experiences to help them not exhibit more serious anxieties later on. You can nip them in the bud early on by making the kids go through some hard things. Parents, if you haven't gone through hard things yourself, if you weren't an athlete, if you weren't a high-level performer, or you haven't been pushed through a lot of scary things, try to do a couple scary things for you. This is why people talk about, taking care of yourself before you can take care of someone else. This is what they mean. You gotta join a gym, get through workouts, do something that maybe makes you nervous as a parent. Let your kids see you do that, by the way. Parents modeling this behavior is amazing.
Right.
Meach, you want to
and
add
of course, it doesn't have to be any particular thing, just maybe something that's challenging for you that you haven't done before.
Yes.
Could be dancing, could be joining a class, could be singing, public speaking, anything at all that gives you a challenge that you're not doing daily. Yeah,
just something that
work out with them.
Work out together, join a gym. It's the beauty of working out. Something very cool about like literally in yoga. This is why yoga is so good, because you're literally practicing the art of breathing while you're putting your body through stress. That's what yoga is, right? Put your body in a tough position physically. It's a metaphor, and breathing through difficulty, right? And working out is a good one too for that. It teaches you to breathe deeply while you're doing hard things, because that's the ultimate mental health, right? People forget to breathe when they having mental health issues, mental health problems. They forget to breathe. That's tension. I think that those are maybe the key takeaways for this show.
Yeah.
And then like relishing the positive that happens afterwards.
Yeah. Seeing the
remind your kid of the struggle they got through. Did you say that?
No, I didn't. Yeah, but reflecting back on it, reminding them, and understanding perspective. Yeah. Perspective is a huge thing for mental illness, right? Or mental health. I think that people who over exaggerate have a bad perspective on things they're going through. Understand that it's not as big as you think.
Yeah. And then a lot of teenagers, they do think that they're in a totally unique situation and it's just them. But it's not to downplay how serious it is in their head, but like it's that perspective helps, how it's a small thing in such a large, massive world that it almost helps you like let go of it in a way. It's not
universal problems. These are universal problems.
It's not the end of the world.
And we all feel like we're kind of stuck in it, right?
Tough topic.
It is a tricky topic, but again, it's messy, and again, the parent has to do the hard thing of, addressing that with kids and working through it, talking about it with kids. Hopefully this episode can help a few kids, maybe. But definitely keep them in sports as long as they want to. And I think that's all we can really say about it.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Cool.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening again. Yes.
Remember, strong athletes produce strong kids to be able to take care of you later.
Right. That's true. Yes. Yeah. If they're great point. All right, guys. See you next time.
All right. Sounds good.
I always love wondering what Meach is going to say. Where is he going?
What's the big idea?